Everyone, it's Maria, and today I'm going to be talking to you about books that I will never declutter or KonMari out of our house. For those of you who don't know, KonMari is a method of decluttering where they ask, does this bring you joy? So I was talking with one of my librarians about how she only owns 3 books. I know she's a big e-reader, but I just kept thinking, like, I can't even imagine picking just 3. So I didn't. I picked about 33. I didn't include sets, but these are the fiction and poetry books that I will never declutter. I have not been reading very much lately because I have been doing a major unhaul of our house, so we have a little bit more space. But looking through my shelves, these are the ones that aren't going anywhere, ever, 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 ever. And some of them I haven't even read. So I will go ahead and try and briefly talk, not going too crazy. First up is the Lord of the Rings series. This is my husband's. He actually stole it from his parents' house, and these are the ones he reread every single year. They're not going anywhere. I remember reading them in college, finishing up one of them as we were at the movie theater going in to see the movie, and these are always going to be on our shelves. Next up is another one of his favorites, Brothers Karamazov, which I have actually not read yet, but it's his favorite, so I will be getting to that. Next is Emma. I actually haven't read Emma yet, but I really enjoy the cover of this. I've liked the movie adaptations. I like several quotes out of it, and I know I'm going to like it. I just haven't read it yet. Next up is William Styron's Set This House on Fire. This was on my grandma's shelves, and my uncle gave it to me and said he thought that I would like it. She really enjoyed it. She and I didn't have a lot in common when it came to reading, except that we both read a lot and loved reading and talking about the books. So and the title, Set This House on Fire, makes me think of her because she's a little firecracker. Next up is another 3 that I got from people that are no longer with me. My great aunt and uncle, Atlas Shrugged, Vanity Fair, and For Whom the Bell Tolls. These were actually printed in the 30s and 40s, and I'm really nervous about reading them, but I want to read them out of those books. So I'm kind of I have to figure out, just being careful, I guess. I can't just tote it around in my purse like I normally do, haphazardly. Next is Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I'm actually halfway through this, and I really enjoy the half that I did. One of my friends who really is not a fiction reader said this is one of her favorite books, so I'm keeping it because Carrie. Next is Don Quixote by Miguel Cervantes. This is the book that makes me think of my mom. I stole it off her shelves. She did a paper for her master's on Don Quixote, and she is a Spanish teacher. So it's just every time I see Don Quixote, I think of her. Next is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. You guys know I haven't read this yet, probably because I'm really going to be sad when it's over. Steinbeck is my favorite, and I can't wait to get to it. There's so many quotes that I've already underlined. So next is the 3, and whenever they come out more, illustrated Harry Potters. Jim Kay is my favorite illustrator, and Harry Potter is one of my favorite series. I didn't read them until I was a grown-up, but they're just perfection along with the illustrations. So next we have The Shack. This is by William Young. This book for me, it actually became a movie I still have not seen, was one of the first movies that really challenged my perception of what God was and is, and how God interacts with us in our darkest moments of life. And while I know some people, oh, it's a novel and whatever, I'm not a huge Christian literature person, and I know there's definitely mixed feelings on this one, but The Shack for me was an important one. The Essential Rumi. Rumi is a Sufi poet, and I just have really, really enjoyed all the bits of poetry from this that I've picked up. Every time I saw a Rumi quote somewhere, I was like, oh, I need to just buy a book of his. So I finally got The Essential Rumi, and I've been slowly reading through it because I'm really enjoying the poetry. Next is Midsummer Night's Dream, and this is another illustrated version by Kevin Madison. I really enjoyed this. Midsummer Night's Dream is one of my very favorites. This is one of my favorite pictures, bottom with the fairies, and it's all the original text, so I will be keeping that one. Complete end of the spectrum. The Martian by Andy Weir. This is one of those books that I think I read twice. It's just one of those books that I think the cover makes me happy. And whenever I get sad and I need a laugh, this is one that I kind of want to pick up. It makes me kind of think about how life could, number one, be a lot worse. I could be alone on a planet, not knowing if I can get back to Earth. But just the sense of humor that he maintains in it just makes me happy. Then we have the first Outlander, Diana Gabaldon. My mom is obsessed with Outlander, like obsessed. And she gave me this copy so I could actually read it and talk with her about it. I've through the first 2 books. I need to read the next, I guess, 5 or 6, whatever is out. But yes, this book just makes me think of my mom. And it is a great book. Time travel and some steamy romance with a little bit of wit. That's kind of fun. Next is Oil and Marble by Stephanie Story. It is a novel about Leonardo and Michelangelo, and I love art. I love history. I had no idea that the Mona Lisa and the David were both worked on in Florence at the same time. This is a historical fictional account of that, but it's very well researched. The storytelling really pulls it through, and I just really enjoyed it so much. There's some of my favorites. So next is a middle grade, A Little Princess, as well as The Secret Garden by Frances Hodges Burnett. These I have owned since I was 4. And I love them. I love them. I cannot wait to read them to my kids. They're some of my favorites. They just embody how I feel about childhood, I guess. Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. I have no idea how many times I read this one either. A lot of times. I really enjoy survival stories. It kind of always, even the Boxcar Children, I was always like, I wonder what I would take if I was trying to survive. And I really enjoyed her chutzpah. The pictures in this, again, I like illustrations, or were just great. Next, these are, the chapter books that probably drew me in first were the American Girl books. This is my Samantha set. You can even see it's kind of broken. I have the other ones, and I probably will never get rid of those either, but Samantha was my American Girl doll. My parents got me, and I just really adore these books. I have no idea how many times I've read them. A lot. But I'm excited about keeping them around for my kids too. Next, I have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I reread this last year. Got to annotate it. I like the cover too. I read this with Krista at Books and Jams, and it was so much fun to discuss this book. I loved so many of the quotes I hadn't remembered. Completely different reading experience than when I did it in high school, which that was for an academic competition, so I was probably reading it very differently, but I really just enjoyed the book. I still do not understand the hype around Mr. Rochester. I just don't get the hype, but I really love Jane, so she's staying. Another John Steinbeck of Mice and Men. This is one you could read in an afternoon. I've seen the play as well. I hadn't read it until I think 2 years ago and just was blown away by how much love and life and truth can be packed into such a short punch of a story. John Steinbeck. Can we just have a moment? I know. Next is 1984 by George Orwell. This is another one that I reread recently. I think last year I reread it. And it was a very different experience again than the first time. I wrote down so many quotes out of it. It made me think, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Phantom of the Opera, Gaston Leroy. This is another one I stole off my parents' shelves. I took about 4 times to read this book, and not because it's long for me. I guess it's not that long for me, but I stopped 4 times because I started to have some dreams that I was Christine, and I was like totally fine with what the Phantom was doing, with all the murder, and I had to stop reading it because I was getting too immersed in the story, and my husband finally said, I think you need to read it before afternoon. Like, just maybe make it a morning read and not an afternoon read so you can sleep at night. Next is Animal Farm by George Orwell. Another really short book. I read when I was in high school, but reread recently, and I laughed out loud, but there's so much truth in this, and it's so little. But I was blown away by what it says about people and how they interact. To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. Atticus Finch is one of my favorite written characters. He's a man that I hope my kids, grow up to be like. That's why I never ever read Go Set a Watchman, because I didn't want to destroy that in my head. So, yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird. Next is The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur. I have purchased this for about 4 different people at this point, and I love it. I keep it by my bed, and I read it almost every night just to kind of center myself before bed, because it just makes me feel like a warm hug of truth and beauty and affirmation. I just love it. Next is Frankenstein. This was my favorite book for about a decade, maybe more. This is the graphic novel illustrated edition. Let's see if I can find. Yeah, you can see it was the Marvel illustrations. And my grandma, the same one that I talked about before, gave me this copy because she knew Frankenstein was my favorite. So, just beautifully done. I really enjoy it. I used to reread it every year, and I haven't in a long time, but I'm never getting rid of that book. Next is my current favorite, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I cried blubbery mess of tears after this book. I underlined so much of it. I can't say enough good things about this book. I've already said so many good things about this book, and I think if I say more, my husband might just stop watching forever. Next is The Humans by Matt Haig. This book was my favorite for 2 years in between Frankenstein and Grapes of Wrath. It's got poetry, it's got sci-fi, thriller, suspense, romance, literary fiction, comedy. I love this book. It started getting me rereading Emily Dickinson again. And I'm currently actually reading his follow-up novel, How to Stop Time, and I think that's going to be one of the first things I buy when I'm done with my no spend year, because it's also pretty great. And finally, All the Light We Cannot See. I have not reread this yet, but I plan to. Anthony Doerr, so much beauty in this book. I like that one of the main characters is blind, because I think that the writing reflects how much you can describe things that you don't see. I love what it says about the universe and how we're connected and how much we want to be connected to each other. And I really love this book. I actually got this from my father-in-law's shelves because he's not a rereader, and I'm definitely planning to. So those are the books that I never, ever, ever, ever plan on getting rid of. So I would love to hear the comments. What books would you keep if you had to whittle it down to, a select, I know this is not a few, but which ones are on your top list? I will talk to you all later. Bye.